Welcome to episode 187 of Sports Geek. On this week's episode, we discuss the race that stops a nation, the Melbourne Cup.
Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host, who's working on new stand-up material, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. Yes, my name is Sean Callanan, and I am working on new stand-up material. I've got about 5-6 minutes, maybe. I need another 5 minutes for my performance at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. I'm doing 2 shows there if you're in Melbourne, April 12 and 15. I'd love to see you there. Taking on hecklers from podcast listeners would be awesome. You can go to seancallanan.com/comedy and get tickets to the School of Hard Knock Knocks shows. As always, you can connect with me on all things social media at Sean Callanan, or you can contact me the old-fashioned way, sean@sportsgeekhq.com, or if you want to have a chat sometime. I really do enjoy catching up and hearing from podcast listeners and potentially how I can help you. You can go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call to do that. This episode, I catch up with David Campbell and Pete Mineo from the VRC, the Victorian Racing Club, to talk about the race that does stop a nation, the Melbourne Cup, which is held in November. So we look back at the recent spring racing Carnival and some of the activations and how the Melbourne Cup as an event and as a broadcast and as a digital property, how it's changed. So I'll let Dave and Pete sort of discuss their roles in that, and we discuss a few different things around the space of major events and how Melbourne is such a massive major event city. I'm recording this, and only next week it'll be the Australian Grand Prix will be here in town, and just a couple of weeks ago we saw the Australian Open finish up. So it's really is a major events town. So here is my chat with David Campbell and Peter Mineo from the Victorian Racing Club. Very happy to be here at the offices of the Victorian Racing Club overlooking the Strait here at Flemington to talk about the Melbourne Cup Carnival and its impact on Australia and what's happening from a digital media and sponsorship perspective. I'm joined by David Campbell, the media partnerships manager at the VRC, and Pete Mineo, the senior manager for sponsorship at the VRC. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thanks for having us, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
So, Dave, I'll start with you. Can you give the listeners, especially those who are outside Australia in the US and Europe, a bit of background of the Melbourne Cup?
Yeah, the Melbourne Cup goes back 157 years. It's an iconic race within Australia, and it literally does stop the nation. It happens on a Tuesday, which is unique in itself. About 100,000 people turn up. It's a public holiday in Melbourne, and it really does go beyond sport. It's a cultural event in Australia, and it just captivates the nation on a certain Tuesday in November. Yeah,
so the first Tuesday in November, you can lock it in. It's around 3:20. Is it about the time, or has it changed over time?
It's 3 o'clock. It has gone between 2:30 and 3:30 over time, but as it stands, it's 3 p.m.
So for those who are trying to understand, yes, we have a public holiday for a horse race here in Melbourne, and it's not just the one day, Pete. It's really. It's 4 days that really captures Melbourne. So so Melbourne Cup happens on a Tuesday. What's the 4 days of the whole carnival?
Yeah, so the 4-day carnival kicks off with Amy Victoria Derby Day on Saturday, which is one of the more traditional race days we have on our card, and very highly sought after race day with the on-track and the horse and the
thing about the Derby Day as the kickoff point is it's the Members' Day for the VRC members, and it's very much their day to kick things off, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. A high proportion of our members are very engaged in Derby Day, and others might know it as the black and white day. So it's the day where, from a fashion perspective, you come in your most traditional colours, and a lot of blacks, a lot of whites, and great way to kick off, I guess, a week-long celebration that.
Yeah, because I think the thing is with the Cup Carnival is that it's more than horse racing. Like the fashions and that kind of thing that kick off Derby Day on the Saturday. You've got Cup Day on the Tuesday, and then you back up again for Oaks Day on the Thursday.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I guess across the 4 different days, and probably the week-long activity, you're seeing a combination of sport, fashion, entertainment, hospitality and business all happening out here at Flemington, and probably more broadly than that across Melbourne, and now with some of the initiatives we've got starting to spread those out of state as well.
So that's Oaks Day on the Thursday, then Stakes Day is Saturday, and that's more of a family day. Yeah,
there is. We see from a demographic perspective a high portion of families around that day, but not to say that day is exclusive to families either. So it's one of the great things about the carnival is looking at the audience of those that do attend on course and the breadth of and those groups and understanding that consumer and that customer. But then also more excitingly is what we're starting to see in Dave's World, a little bit around the off-course consumer and what that looks like and the opportunities for us there.
So over the 4 days, from an attendance point of view, just to again give people's perspective, how many people come through the carnival, and I don't know if you have the numbers from last year.
For the week, it's about 315,000, give or take. Cup Day's obviously the peak at about 100. Derby's about 90. Oaks is around 60 plus, and Stakes around 70 plus. So, yeah, well over 300,000 people come through the gates, which is phenomenal in itself, and I think stands out anywhere in the world.
So, in your role as media partnerships, what comes under that brief?
So it's all media and broadcast rights, and the last couple of years been focused on digital development as well as it's gone down. So it's all our media agreements, it's our international distribution, as well as all the domestic, and now a lot of content creation, which is what's being desired by our sponsors, partners, and media partners.
So in the same as in most traditional sports, you've got your TV broadcaster in Channel 7 here, but as the digital platforms have developed, you're looking to fill all those gaps, whether they be, how do people see it internationally? How do the social media platforms, how do they start being part of the Cup Carnival and Melbourne Cup overall? You were one of the first sports to sort of start talking to Twitter about live streaming the race. You want to talk us through how, I guess that relationship and how that sort of developed?
Yeah, I think the stars aligned with that. It was not long after they did the deal with the NFL. We were canvassing internationally for, we'd always wanted a global streaming partner. We're looking at the live streaming space. So I think we had early conversations after they'd done the NFL. They were also at the same time looking for an international space outside of the US, and they needed something that would give them a good footprint into Asia. They also were looking something that was broad, which is what we deliver. So our demographics, we pretty much hit everyone. And so the timing worked pretty well. It was a bit of a leap of faith as well. We were in discussions before they'd actually done before the NFL had gone to air.
Yep.
So there was a lot of learnings from both parties. But they've been a fantastic partner to work with. We've both, learned a lot, tried a lot, and trusted each other a lot. And the results have been phenomenal. I think the first year we did it was about 200,000 tuned in. This year was 1.6 million. So the growth has been massive, and we're really getting some really good insights about who's watching when and where. We're already in talks with Twitter about future plans.
And the good thing is, again, because it was so early and it was where the digital platforms started moving away from, hey, sports rights holders, come on our platforms. We've got really cool platforms. Here's our customers and our fans, to acting a little bit more like a traditional broadcaster to say, well, we want to get into the space of delivering rights. And so then that becomes a conversation like it has been with the broadcasters. So, Twitter was early in trying to do that, and now we're seeing Facebook, Amazon, Google all approach sports rights in that manner. So I think, we've recently seen, I think it was the Premier League rights, renegotiate with Sky and stuff. And again, they were saying, where are the digital players? They didn't participate, but will they participate in future rights or segments of the rights and that kind of thing? So I think it's good to have people like yourselves getting the race broadcast, because one, it allows the Twitters of the world to test their systems, help them figure out also. I think, when the first time it came out, it was like, it's great that it's there, but Twitter didn't know how to tell everybody that it was there. And so they've started to develop, well, we've got to solve the discovery issue and make sure that our users know the rights. So that's an interesting space to sort of say, how do we, we've got a stack of people here on the course, we've got a lot of people interested. How do we start connecting them with, the different platforms?
Yeah, the amplification for Twitter and the promotion, again, as you're right, has matured and grown, and that led to the numbers heading in the right direction. I think just being able to talk to the whole global audience. We know the race that stops the nation. We know it captivates Australia, but we're learning more about the world. I think when you start getting tweets in, we had someone on the top of a mountain in Canada saying, I'm watching it live, someone in an apartment in Argentina, someone's pulled over on the side of the road in India and Jaipur and posting, I'm just watching the Melbourne Cup on my phone. It really starts to hit home that, the audience globally is connecting, and we're really learning a lot. I think the other thing, I suppose, with the platforms, that social media gets grouped as an umbrella, but we're really starting to see the Twitters, Facebook, Snapchats, they're actually very, very different in the flavours and what they deliver, and that really came through this year in the content and how it's consumed. I think you touched on earlier about the fashions and the diversity. So yes, we are a horse race, and that's the premise of it all, but we have so much else going on with the bands, the fashion, the birdcage, which is, for those that don't know, it's probably it's Australia's most premium hospitality offering, and it attracts a whole heap of global celebrities. And so people are consuming this content in different ways at different times. And so it's the learnings we're getting with the digital space. It's been as helpful as anything else.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the birdcage with you, Pete, because it is both iconic and it goes hand in hand, with the carnival itself, and the fact that you've extended that, I guess, as a piece to the activations around the park and what sponsors are doing. What are sponsors looking for when they're coming to you from a Cup Carnival point of view, from the event activation and what they're trying to do on course?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Sean. There's, I guess, when working with different sponsors, each of them have different objectives which are very unique. So for some sponsors, it's a brand play. And understanding how they want to get their brand positioned in market and how we can help them do that. Others, it may be something that's hospitality-led, so the birdcage gives them an experience to create an environment which, I guess, really accelerates their brand position, and it was really critical in being able to tell a brand story.
Yep.
And then you've got an asset like the park, which is the ability to give, or there's some which in sync with some of the other elements and opportunities on course, gives a space where brands can tell their stories direct to consumers, and whether that's more your activation and being able to connect face-to-face on the spot. So
yeah, because like at the park you had Maya, which has been a long-time partner with the fashions. They were running their fashions there. You had the silent disco with the vodka, or was it?
Yeah, with Absolute.
Absolute, yep. And a few different things that were available to the general punter, that they could go in and activate. And I think one of the best things about living in Melbourne is we've got so many different events in that sports space, that event precinct type of stuff, whether it's what the City of Melbourne's doing with different pop-up parks and that kind of thing, or other major events like the Aussie Open and the Grand Prix, that there's a lot of really pushing the envelope, and everyone's sort of pushing each other to, really extend and build out that experience space for sponsors.
Yeah, that's definitely the case, and I think being in a competitive environment where events are pushing each other is a great thing. And you look at the way brands, I guess, when looking at consumers, brands now value consumers more than ever and understand that the connection with them is very critical. So when you get a chance to talk to them, it's really good, or it's really important to be able to give something that's of value back to that consumer, because that's probably that key touch point where your brand will be able to make an impact on.
And some of the stuff, especially around the birdcage, it's built for platforms like Instagram. Like, I wish, because I was wandering around the birdcage on Derby Day, and Usain Bolt was one of the guests of, I think, in the Mum Marquee, which had a giant yacht. And again, I'll share pictures. Had a giant yacht as part of their activation. I tried to get a picture of Usain Bolt. He's too quick. Yes. He just literally flew by.
You were looking very dapper, I must say, Sean, on when we did see you out here over Carnival.
Yeah, but the thing is, those lavish, big activations are built for people to be taking selfies, sharing them, saying this is the experience, and that's what, in this case, Mum want to do. But you've got other ones that are, looking to activate in the park and that kind of thing. How has, I guess, digital started to change the way the birdcage looks and feels, but also what sponsors are looking out of the space?
Yeah, I think the term Instagrammable moments seems to come through with a lot of conversations we're having now. And I guess a lot of the time making sure that, I guess, wherever a brand gives an opportunity for that consumer or for that guest of theirs, depending on the actual space, to, something as simple as a selfie via Instagram, or trying to capture what's happening and being able to then share with your friends and saying, well, I was here first and I got a glimpse of it.
Yep.
And making sure that, I guess, the environment that's set up for that, which if it's being hosted by a brand, reflects all their values and their core strategies, is going to give them the best chance of being able to get the push on the other end of it. I think looking at our research and our demographics in terms of some of the behaviours of our audience, we understand that play, and we've tried to create some environments and some spaces on course where we can really cater for that and give those that want to be very vocal on Instagram a chance to engage that way, whereas there's other parts of the course where that's probably not as important to people, and we treat that in a certain way as well.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that's really important and is the fact that you could get on the internet. So rolling out things like the Wi-Fi, which is this your third year, fourth year?
I think it's at least the fourth. It does expand every year. And
it does. The weights, but at rolling out, like again, when you rolled it out, I think it was 4 years ago. It was really early, especially here in Australia, to be able to provide Wi-Fi coverage for 100,000 people. It's not something that you can to be sneezed at, but it's really vital for that content and that experience. Hey, look at me! I'm at the Cup, or I'm at the birdcage, or I'm at different parts of the track. To be able to share that, because it does drive people back in from a digital point of view, and whether it gets people to be tuning into the Twitter stream. One of the things that I found a lot when looking at both being on track and what was happening was the amount of content that was being shared by punters on Snapchat in what they were doing, and because it is really, hey, this is my story, I'm having a great day. Are you seeing the same thing in talking to Snapchat and what's happening in that space?
Yeah, no, Snapchat, they were over the moon with the figures when we were the top 3 Snap stories for Australia for the year. They love it for the richness of what it offers, and it's that demographic from the horses to the fashion to the bands, and they mould it in. Kentucky Derby do a lot as well with it. It's very popular, so they sort of base it off that a little bit as well. But again, seeing where Snap plays, I think you're talking about Twitter. Twitter's very live and instant and in the moment. Snap's probably not too far behind that, but still a little bit more curated.
Yep.
And then we did the Facebook 360 stuff where we experimented because, as you said, we've got so much content across the course. What digital age has allowed us to deliver is cover all that.
Yep.
Before, when it was only broadcast, there's only so many hours in a day that you can fit into the broadcast. So we're being able to take people into places they've never been before and take them behind the scenes. How they consume it has been interesting. So they're on their Twitter instantly watching the race, and that's done. Then Snap's a little bit later, but it's curated and then it goes out.
It's the 24 hours, what did happen on that day, or I did lose so-and-so during the day. What did they do?
Yeah.
And it's really good for that because, even with, the internet currently outraged with the latest Snap updates where they've sort of moved, your friend's conversation to one side and the media player influencer on the other side, and the internet hates change. So everyone's saying change it back. I actually like it from a sports rights holder point of view because the sports rights holders, the influencers, the teams appear in that right side. So it gives incentive to go to that right side to see what's happening. So whether it's the Melbourne Cup produced story, you can go to the right side and see that, but you can also go to the left side and see what your friends are doing. And then if things like the embeddable snap map, which is, again, only released, that's super exciting for something next year, because then you'll be able to pop in, drill into the birdcage and say what snaps are being shared there. As long as they're shared publicly, and because it's such a premium event and it's a look at me, people want to do it. So it's really going to change, I guess, how people consume an event like the Carnival.
Yeah, you're right. I think Snap was, as you said, it's sort of a refresher, a reminder of just what just happened. And they go back and then... so that was really popular probably in that 24-hour period. And then we saw Instagram's always just going along and building. Facebook was the interesting one. When we did the Facebook Live, which we discussed with you before, and we were going through in 360, and during the week while it was live, we were watching the numbers and they weren't tracking as well as we thought.
So to give both a bit of the infrastructure and a bit of the backstory, as you said, there's multiple parts to the track that weren't being covered. Like they were getting... covered in between races and, hey, we're going out to the birdcage, that kind of thing. But there's a lot happening in the birdcage. There was a lot happening at the park. There was a lot happening in different parts, the mounting yard that wasn't being covered. So with Facebook and looking at the 360 product, you had multiple cameras and were sort of switching between, so someone could be tuning in and then you were switching, here's the fashions in the field. You can watch it, but in a 360 format. Take us through, I guess, that and what you've learnt and what you learnt from that.
Yeah, we very much experimented at the time, and I think 360 was still a developing technology, but in its live format and a continuous live stream, it hadn't really been done at all. So we wanted to take people on a continuous live journey.
Yep.
And so it was a leap of faith in testing it out, and the market's still probably not ready for the continuous live. What we learned is there's still the snap, the bite-sized stuff still consumable. But it was actually after, so we got towards the end of Carnival, the numbers probably weren't where we projected them. And then once the Carnival actually finished, they took off.
Yeah.
They just started going and going and going and going for 3-4 weeks after, where they clicked over 1 million. We had over 1 million views on all our 360 Facebook stuff. So it opened our eyes to the Carnival keeps living in that Facebook format. The Twitter, they've moved on. They're on to the next instant now. Yeah. But we're really starting to see a distinct use and how people consume. And as I say, Snapchat's probably in between there, and then Insta's again in between Facebook and Snap. So that was probably the biggest eye-opener on that.
Because it's a little bit of like who's doing the consuming and why are they consuming, and then it's the when. And so, when something's live, you are competing against, the TV or, the Twitter feed that is live. And so, cutting it up and also showing the different parts. So the bits that did really well were the 360 of the bands playing with the camera on the stage and everyone jumping up and down, and they were kicking off at like around near the last 4:30, 5 o'clock, and everyone was sort of partying on at the end of the day. That was like, oh, wow, this is, part horse racing, part music festival, part event, that people are like, oh, I was there, I'm sharing it and watching it back, or I wish, the FOMO, I wish I was there. So, from your point of view, Pete, how does that start changing, I guess, your sponsorship product offering now that you've got some of these digital assets that have more length than 4 days?
Yeah, absolutely. And probably the piece you haven't even touched on there is what's happening prior to the event, and something like the Melbourne Cup Tour and the adventure that we take the Cup on in the lead up to, both in, I guess, in Victoria, but also out of state and internationally. Yep. There's so much content that can help curtail a journey to Flemington. And I think to answer your question around how do brands, what does it mean for brands? It really opens up the platform to brands that want to be associated with your event, your product, and Victorian Racing Club, I guess, more holistically, moving away from just brands that were maybe more traditional in the racing sense, say if you go back a couple of decades, to now brands that want to engage with consumers and driving a real material outcome. So that's the new challenge that we have to deliver back to.
And I think the lead up piece is important, especially when you have got, the 4-day Carnival. And I think when you've got a major event, whether it's like the Carnival, I think the Australian Open has the same issues, the wrong word, but has the same, thing. And so is the Grand Prix in, you're going from 0 to 100 from a volume of content and that kind of thing. So anything you can do to warm up that audience and engage that audience, say this is coming, that kind of thing, and that's where you can do content pieces, work with your sponsors to extend it out. In that, hey, don't forget, and it's again, everyone knows Melbourne Cup's coming, but it's a bit of, well, these are the things that you can tune in for, whether it's the digital stuff or attendance. It's like, oh wow, we're going to have this great park and we're going to have music acts. That kind of piece can extend it from that 4 days, but then the longer tail of post event, like I think there's a lot of opportunity in that space.
Yeah, it's a lot longer, so it's probably 3 or 4 weeks. And I think you've touched on from 4 days, so to speak, but we're finding the length of it it's really 6 months, and from the launch of the Melbourne Cup tour to the starting of the building of the birdcage, the horses start to arrive internationally in September. We've always had that content, but we're probably starting to curate it properly and tell that story into different markets, different platforms at different times. And then, as you said, that tail after Carnival keeps going. And tonality is the other one as well, both for domestic and international. You've really got to tell it in their own voice. And that's something we're probably looking to go to at the moment. We did some stuff with Weibo, with Sina in China as well. And year one, we just gave them our content and it performed pretty well. But this year we brought over a Chinese crew and they started to curate in their own language and their own tone. And the results were, we saw the instant growth.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot like traditional sporting clubs, the VRC has members and a membership base, which is you both work for the VRC. How do you balance serving the members and making sure the members are happy because they're your season ticket base, if you're looking at it from a traditional point of view, to also the general punter and either the race goer or the event goer? How do you guys get that balance right?
Yeah, it's very, very important piece you raise. Our members are integral to the success of and the legacy of the club here, and a very, very vital part of our business. And we, through our customer engagement team, we look at the journey of every customer that comes through, and whether they're, as you say, an annual customer, very important, like our members, through to somebody that maybe is engaging, on a one-time basis, and understanding what the optimal way to deliver back to that consumer is, and making sure that the experience they have with the event or the actual day that they're attending.
Yep.
Or otherwise whatever the touch point is, hits the experience that they're seeking to attain.
And from your point of view, Dave, is there getting that balance right from again, KPIs is the wrong term, but like how many people you're trying to engage, and then also, the Carnival is effectively a sales funnel to say, hey, you should be a member, become part of the VRC. Yeah,
one of the big shifts we had occurred probably 2 years ago with what we used to show. So for all our media partners, and it was a frustration for them, media members areas was off limits. It was private, it's behind the scenes, no cameras in there. And we looked at it and it just wasn't probably the right strategy when you've got the best facilities on the course not being shown, and how are people going to know whether they become a member if they can't see it? Yep. So we've really opened up the doors. It's now profiling the nursery. We've got a new $128 million stand that's going to be state of the art. We'll be taking people right in there to what that does. It's got a rooftop garden. So it's been more the content strategy of opening the doors, showing people the aspirational of what it is to be like a member, where before we used to just not show that at all. And the only thing you saw on TV was really the general public in the corporate areas. Yeah, and it's an important part, of the story. It's an important part of the marketing to say, well, this is why you should be a member. And if you lock it all down, then no one knows about it. Then it's a problem in 15 years when you're saying, how come no one's becoming a member? It's like, oh, well, you didn't tell anybody. And these are the platforms that people expect to be spoken to. So I think that's really important. Dave, you've got some numbers and some stats just to give people some ideas of, I guess, the magnitude from a digital point of view and some of the consumption stats. What were some of the ones that, I guess, jump out to you, and the ones that I guess Pete is talking to sponsors with that impress people? The ones that probably jumped out when we know the importance of the Melbourne Cup in Australia and the attraction worldwide. But digital has probably started to give us the real numbers.
Yep.
We know with News Limited, it's one of the highest selling papers of the year. We know it rates through the roof for Channel 7. But now with digital, I think that what came out last year was Google's top searches for 2017. Melbourne Cup came in number 2.
Yep.
And Facebook most talked about topics in 2017. Melbourne Cup came in number 2, behind some other topics. Same-sex marriage was massive in Australia last year, and Chris Cornell's death and a few other things, Mayweather, McGregor. So it outranked all of those except for International Women's Day. So they were pretty big numbers to sit. It shows the importance and how entrenched it is, not just on a sporting level, but culturally and to all corners of Australia. So it's good to get those numbers. The other one is probably learning. We're starting to, when you talked about the content, we're learning about who's watching the birdcage and fashion and the races, at what time, what demographics. We're starting to get a breakdown of gender and age. We're starting to get a lot more information we didn't have even 2 years ago. So, working with Pete's team, he can talk to the market in a lot more educated fashion.
And that's the thing. It's for you. It's the audiences that you're saying, well, yes, here's our horse racing audience. They're in on 7. They are buying the paper and they're looking for the race. But then you've got, here's another audience that is just interested in the fashion piece, or is just really following it on these channels. That potentially opens up new doors and new sponsorship opportunities and partners that potentially haven't seen the Carnival as an option for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly in the non-traditional sense of the word, as you described there. I think the clarity of what you can provide and what is available, and that transparency is pretty critical to be able to offer a pathway for brands to deliver back a specific ROI that they're looking to achieve. So
as we were recording this earlier this week, you made a really big announcement around the naming rights partner. Do you want to talk us through that, Pete, and the announcement that it was made, and so it takes a little bit behind the process?
Yeah, we, as you said, Sean, earlier this week we announced Lexus as the new principal partner of the Victorian Racing Club. And that will culminate in Lexus being the naming rights partner to Melbourne Cup Day and the Lexus Melbourne Cup for the first time in 2018. We're thrilled here with where we've with being able to bring that announcement to the public, and something we've been very excited to want to share. And it's a great way to extend our 14-year partnership with Lexus that we've had a lot of success over time.
And so they're only the 4th naming rights partner of the Melbourne Cup, if I'm right?
That's correct. In the 158, what will be the 158th year history this year, they become the 4th brand to become naming rights partner with the Melbourne Cup.
So that's exciting as far as, I guess, extending the partnership. You don't become a 14-year member and a partner and continue going. Things are going well. Like, are you excited in what they want to do, both, on the course, but then also look at, the options that we've been talking about from a digital point of view? Yeah,
absolutely. Probably one of the most pleasing things is that we've been able to build on a very successful relationship with Lexus over time that's worked, great commercial outcomes both ways. And as we've continued to enhance that partnership, when the opportunity for them to, I guess, take a larger presence with our organisation and particularly around the Melbourne Cup and becoming the Lexus Melbourne Cup, it shows, I guess, great that the partnership can go further.
Yep.
And that strength of partnership, probably what we've built on. And, they've got some exciting plans, as we do, for what 2018 looks like, how both brands can enhance and extend our association, but also what platforms we can tap into to be able to tell our stories and drive commercial outcomes.
And the good thing is, Pete, the fact that you've got this digital presence that is being developed and, is more quantifiable, which is a good thing about digital. You're able to go to Lexus and say, this is who's watching internationally. Lexus is, international brand, so they can count on, this is where we're getting viewed. A big part of the equation in talking to partners like Lexus?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, obviously, it's a key focus is to drive Lexus growth within Australia. But back in even Japan, where they're from, it was number 2. That's where it consumed in Twitter. Japan came in number 2. So we got those stats in the US as well. It's a big growth market for us as well. there's the stories to be told as well. So they're being the premium partner, they get the number one spot in the birdcage. There's the tour that's starting. There's so much content that's going to be really rich to produce.
Yep.
And also we're lucky they've happen to have a commodity they make that is very, very easy to integrate into a lot of things.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's very much following the path that we've seen, other sports rights holders, whether they be, leagues in the US and here in Australia, where the more content that you and your team can produce, the better integration it is from a sponsorship point of view. Digital can be the vehicle. You can still be doing stuff with your traditional partners, but the scope of what you can do in the digital space is really up to you. If you can go and sell it, then it can go and be produced. So, it's really on the, for mine, the bit that I love about digital is you can come up with the idea, and if you have someone like Pete that can go talk to partners and sell them on the content and the platforms that you're trying to do it on to get the results, then it's not finite. You're not talking about, you've only got X many hours on a TV channel. If a partner wants to be part of it, whether it's on their channels or on your channels, you've got a lot of scope with the product over the 4 days, but then over the extended period of the carnival.
Yeah, and a major partner such as Lexus, they do sponsor the race, and the coverage there is enormous globally, but they're entrenched on across everything, across the course. So there's not really a demographic they can't talk to, and that's probably one of the rich things about our carnival. And there's nowhere in Australia we can't go to make it relevant, and we probably look forward to going everywhere around Australia with Lexus driving it.
Terrific. So to wrap up, I wanted to do the Sports Geek closing five, and get your answers. I'll start with you, Pete. Do you remember your first sports event you ever went to?
I do.
And do you want to tell? The part of the story is you've actually got to tell people.
Yeah, I do. I followed Dad to Windy Hill and sat out in the wing to watch the Bombers play the Eagles in a thrilling match. Since then, I've become a pretty passionate Magpies fan. So Dad probably hasn't spoken to me since that day, but yeah,
that's all right. You're welcome on this podcast as myself as a Magpies man. But yeah, Windy Hill would have been a suburban footy ground. And how old do you reckon you were?
I was 3, and I was.
Your memory's better than me. I don't think I can remember anything from when I was 3.
I remember it because Dad at the end of the game, it was a thrilling one, and the game was so close that he threw me up in the air, and yeah, I do remember falling pretty quickly.
So you now have a fear of heights is probably as an outcome.
Yeah, we've just managed to recover that.
What about yourself? Do you remember your first sports event you ever attended?
I think it's probably Australia versus Pakistan. Dana at the SCG, like probably 1989.
Oh yeah.
I think remembering the what goes on off the field as much as on the field was pretty colourful back in those days on the hill. So yeah,
that was back when the SCG had a hill and there wasn't a complete stand, and yeah, it would have been lively. It
was, yeah. I think the other thing was, as a kid, it's like being inside a television for the first time. You've watched so much of it on TV. So yeah, I think that's it.
So we have seen and partaken in a whole bunch of, food's a big part of the carnival, a lot of different food offerings, and it keeps getting upscaled every year. You guys have been to many sports events. Do you have a favourite food when you go to a sports event, or a favourite ridiculous food memory of going to a sports event? I'll start with you, Dave.
Oh, I'm trying to think. I was actually going to go the other way and go, whenever you go to a sport event, there's a lot of amazing food, but it's really when the pies come out at half time.
The other answer is what's your go-to food, and the pie with sauce is one that is often chosen. It's one of my favourites.
It's hard to separate the footy and pies, yeah.
What about yourself?
Yeah, I'll agree with I'll go with Dave in food and pies, but also one of my favourite memories of food being of an Italian family. We used to go to the football, we still do, with cousins and uncles, and there was a group of 10 of us, and Mum would pack a salvage pack for us, and sometimes the sandwiches were just getting ridiculously big with some traditional Italian schnitzels in them, and we used to have people around us drooling in envy in what we'd bring out when halftime would come. It'd be like a picnic at the seats.
Oh, that'd be right. I used to, when I was taking my kids to the footy and didn't want to buy all the food at the footy because it's a small mortgage. I used to do the hot dogs in the thermos and pull them out at half time. And the envy around the seats probably wasn't the same as an Italian schnitzel, but people go, "Oh, that's a good idea."
Yeah, it's quite ironic now that we. I still retain a reserve seat in the same spot, and about 3 rows ahead of me there's a generation of next kids doing it with their grandparents where they must own a pizza restaurant because every week they come in with what looks like about 6 different pizzas, and I'm the one drooling now.
What's Dave, what's the first app you open in the morning?
It's probably weather.
Weather? Yep. We do live in Melbourne. You just don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, it is weather. And then probably Twitter gives me my news.
Yep.
Yeah, they're probably the 2.
What about yourself, Pete?
To be a tussle between either Instagram, just to check how my following's going.
Yep.
Or the ATP WTA, big tennis fan, so I'd love to find out what's happening overnight and whether Roger's going to make number 1 again at the end of this week.
Terrific. Do you? Is there someone that you follow, read, or look up to, whether in the industry or outside the industry, that you think, or an author or something like that you think that podcast listeners should check out?
That's a good question. I read very broadly. I'm very interested in what's happening out of the States. That tends to lead the way in a lot of the rights deals and the technologies coming out. Obviously, I follow a lot of the links that you send through, Sean, that takes me through to the wides and the varieties, and a lot of the tech stuff's really interesting because it tends to lead once the tech's been made. Then goes in, you put the content in it. So if you can try and stay at the forefront of what actually is being able to develop. No one individual, I think. I think it's
is there a publication or that's one of your go-tos? Because like one of the things I liked, and Steve Sematino recommended it to me recently is Wired is still doing a great job in reporting, like not only what's happening in the space, from a digital point of view, but also potentially where they're heading. Because you've sort of got to spend a bit of time. Hey, what's happening? But where are they heading? We can quote Wayne Gretzky, the old "go to where the puck is" kind of thing, and I've completely butchered that quote. Yeah. But everyone's seen it on a slide.
I think I actually enjoy the aggregated ones, the sites, and why it does pop up in those. But certain sites that can aggregate, and because you get that broad. In my space, it's from the technology to the content to the rights deals to racing itself. So I need a pretty broad spectrum.
So that's where I think and Blake Solly recommended it, the sports. What's it? I'm just trying to think. Redef, which pulls together a whole bunch of ones. Yep. Another tool that I've been using recently is called Refined. Yep. Find as in FIND. And you pretty much say, oh, this is who I follow, but here's the topics. And it curates from your audience. So it pulls links that I might share, but then what other people share, and it bubbles up, oh, here's the articles. I've been using it for a couple of months, and it does a pretty good job of bringing out broad pieces that you go, oh, yeah, I should look at that. That's interesting. What about yourself, Pete?
Probably a little bit more of a generalist at the minute. Looking, I guess, through some of the influencers and things that I follow via LinkedIn, understanding kind of the content they're sharing and stories, I start to find myself on a click-through journey. Yep. That once I'm... clicking and then seeing.
Is there someone in the sponsorship space that you're sort of finding yourself, whether it's a site or someone that you're looking at to say, hey, this is what's happening in the space?
There probably are a few probably different people that I'm looking to. But interestingly, I've taken a lot of energy and a lot of excitement from looking outside of the sponsorship world to looking at things like a lot of the stuff. Lately, I seem to find myself reading a lot of stuff out of the Harvard world. So from their business review, understanding, kind of more macro topics in business, understanding how I can then try and apply them back through the sports landscape. And, we've got an amazing emotive platform here that a lot of businesses are absolutely envious of. And understanding how that we can take that to market and lead the market.
Definitely. So the last question, and you can answer it personally and also professionally from a VRC point of view. And again, it's a bit like saying pick your favourite child. What social media platform is your MVP? We'll start with you, Dave.
I think probably given the work we've done with Twitter and the relationship we've built with them, we're closer with them than the others. And although we are developing with all of them, but yeah, it's probably Twitter. I think they've played an important role with the VRC, and will continue to do so.
And what do you find yourself personally? Is there a platform that you find yourself using more and more?
I'm always curious of the next one, to be honest. I know it's been a while since we've had, I think since Snapchat popped up before then. No, I'm waiting for the next one to lob in, and Facebook will probably buy it anyway.
Yeah.
There's one in the States, I think I was hearing, is it Yak, or it's about bringing people who are in close proximity together.
Yeah, the anonymous chat, geolocated sort of space
of communication. So,
which is sort of it did really well in the college space, which is where Facebook sort of started. It's had a few stumbles around anonymous bullying and stuff like that, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I think the next piece is around geolocational and what happens in the space, which again fits when you've got 100,000 people in the same space.
Yeah, so it's something we're sort of looking at. I must say, actually, this is going back one step, but I think it was amongst my group, but WhatsApp's actually growing and what's going on there and how that's being used.
Yep.
So it's almost WhatsApp's what I'm using a lot, but the people are loading up more and more videos and content is getting broader.
And that's the thing, the messaging space is still a little bit, unknown. And I think Snapchat is definitely in the messaging space first, in the publishing space second. I think that's where people discount it. They go, people aren't using it. I'm like, no, they're using it to message people a lot. And so I think that that's interesting. What about yourself?
Professionally, just seeing the work that Dave and the guys from Twitter have been doing excites me a lot. So for me there, and the news and the instantaneousness of Twitter and the way that feedback can be sought and the different levels of feedback and
and I think the fact that the pivoting into media is working for Twitter, and as they like the fact in the last 12 to 18 months they've made more changes in the last 12 to 18 months than they had in the last 8 years. So it's for me it's for the better.
Absolutely. I was very early on Twitter and I used to use it as integral source and probably went away from it.
Yep.
Migrated towards Facebook a little bit more to get news. But now, particularly with what they're looking to do from vision and video and how they're starting to bring that back, I've adapted that way and professionally. But personally, having 2 kids under 4, Instagram's probably my go-to because who doesn't love seeing their kids grow up, and it's amazing just seeing how my 4-year-old loves Instagram, and she's always wanting posts. And interestingly, she wants her own YouTube channel where she can broadcast to the world. So it's that's an interesting challenge that we're getting thrown as parents in our house.
That is a challenge for parents. So, lastly, how can people connect with you guys on the internet? What's the best way to do it? Dave Campbell, where's the best place for people to connect with you?
It sounds probably old school. Probably via email, Twitter. Use my Twitter handle, just Davo Sport. That's probably the best way to do it.
You on LinkedIn?
I'm on LinkedIn as well. Yes,
we'll put your links to your LinkedIn and please connect to that. What about yourself, Pete? What's the best way for people to?
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best way from a professional sense, but obviously active across all the other platforms.
All right, we'll put links to all your platforms. Pete Mineo, thank you very much. David Campbell, thank you very much. Look forward to this year's Carnival later in the year.
Sean Cullinan, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Sean.
Download our Facebook campaigns guide at sportsgeekhq.com/FB campaigns.
Thanks again to Pete Mineo and Dave Campbell. The links to connect with them both on LinkedIn will be in the show notes. As always, it's sportsgeekhq.com/187 if you just put the episode number in. I'd love your feedback too on the show notes. Show notes and podcasts, they're an interesting thing. And it's a real discussion point in the podcasting community on what should be included and not included. We've tried a few different things to repurpose the content. But I'd love your opinion. Do you check out the show notes? Do you go there for links? Do you want more information in them? let me know. Sean at sportsgeekhq.com, or check out the links, or send me a message on the Sports Biz Slack community. I'd love to know. Just before I wrap up, I just sort of wanted to ask if there is a way that I can help you, the listener, and there's a variety of different ways. I was recently at a conference and people were asking me, what does Sports Geek do? And it really does depend on what the client wants. We've got a variety of offerings in the digital space and in helping sports at different levels. It could be in the content review space. You want to look back at your content. Are you hitting the right marks from a audience point of view, and that kind of thing? And how can you maximise it for the results you want? Whether it's better integration with your sponsors, or identifying and reaching out to a new fan base, in that fan development space. Or it could just be, platform reviews. What are you trying to do on different types of platforms, and where we're seeing the trends and what you might do, and tweaking things on Facebook or on Instagram stories and how you might use it. A lot of the stuff that we're doing at the minute is around rate card review and development, and helping the teams understand your content and what you're delivering and the audiences, and then how you can build that story to go back to your partners. And then obviously we're doing a lot of stuff around campaign development with Sports Geek campaigns using tradable bits. That also entails some chatbot builds and things like that. So if there's if you're in that space and you're having some issues with that space, please give us a call or send us an email. I'm more than happy to discuss it with podcast listeners. And also, while I'm here, the Facebook campaigns guide that we developed and the Facebook data guide that we've developed are going gangbusters. So if you want the Facebook data guide, you can go to sportsgeekhq.com/FB data and download that. It tells you how to use the Facebook audiences and the advertising tools to learn a bit more about your fans and set yourself up for a campaign. And then the campaigns guide, sportsgeekhq.com/FB campaigns, shows you how we roll out campaigns, whether it be for merchandise, for ticketing, for sponsorship, that kind of thing. How are we all tied all together? So if you're trying to figure out how to do the Facebook ads piece, they are a really good starting point. As always, my name is Sean Callanan. Stay tuned for the sounds of the game. Running it again, the final 30 seconds of the famous Melbourne Cup that I took when I was at the Melbourne Cup last year, in the stands, and you can really hear the excitement of all of the punters there cheering on their horse as they hit the line. So stay tuned for that, for the sounds of the game. But until next episode, my name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Join over 1,000 sports business executives in Sports Biz Slack. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/Slack. Please share your fave episodes of Sports Geek on LinkedIn. Be sure to tag Sean Callanan.
Go to sportsgeekhq.com for more sports digital marketing resources.
Want to chat with Sean? Book a time for a call. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/phone call.
Match dynamite, then we quickly